Sigma allowed me to borrow the 20-200mm lens, so I was able to compare it to the Lumix 28-200mm. Hi friends, Dirk here. Thanks so much for tuning in. In today's video, we'll be comparing both lenses. We'll break it down into different categories and we'll assign points for each of the categories. And at the end of the video, you'll know which lens is right for you. Last year when I was traveling through Europe, I took the 28-200mm with me. And for the most part, I was happy with it, okay with it, but I always envied my son who was shooting with a Sony camera and he had the Tamron 28-200, which was significantly better in sharpness and overall image quality. Now Tamron doesn't produce for Lumix, for the L-mount alliance, and that's why I was pretty excited to hear that Sigma came out with the 20-200mm lens. Let's start with price. It is a clear win for the Lumix 28-200mm. It retails at $998 compared to the Sigma, which costs $999. No points. In terms of build, they are really very different. The Lumix has 17 elements in 13 groups. It weighs only 413 grams. And as far as I can tell, this is the smallest super zoom lens that I've ever encountered. The Sigma has 18 elements in 14 groups. It is a bit heavier with 550 grams. What's a bit odd is that on the Sigma, the zoom ring turns in the complete opposite direction. No matter zoomed or not zoomed, the Lumix is significantly smaller. And that really matters because this determines what kind of travel bag you have to bring. So yes, this is definitely a more travel-friendly size and therefore point for the Lumix. On B&H's website, the minimum focusing distance for the Lumix is only 14 cm on the wide end. So we can get super close to our subject and that gives us even macro abilities. And the images look really good. However, fully extended, the minimum focusing distance is now 65 cm. Also, the Sigma has a variable minimum focusing distance. On the wide end, it's 25 cm, so we can't get as close as we can with the Lumix lens. The minimum focusing distance for the Sigma fully zoomed is officially almost close to 65 cm, but in reality we can get even a little bit closer. And when we're comparing the images, the macro image from the Lumix and the 200mm image from the Sigma, they look very much alike. So the Sigma makes up for the missing minimum focusing distance on the wide end. No point for either of those lenses because I don't see an advantage in either or. When we're looking at the sharpness, at the widest aperture and also widest angle, I was surprised to see that the Lumix is definitely sharper than the Sigma lens. Of course, I started this test at 28mm for both lenses because here we don't have anything wider than 28mm on the Lumix. As soon as we zoom, the Sigma improves significantly. At 50mm, the center sharpness is so much better compared to the Lumix, but now when we're looking at the corners, it is simply a class of its own. It outperforms the Lumix by miles. Also at 100mm, it's the same thing. We have a better center sharpness on the Sigma, but again, the corners are in a league of its own, and also at 200mm. Definitely a big point for the Sigma. Chromatic aberrations are minimal on both lenses. However, I see a slight advantage for the Sigma. In some lighting situations, especially when I zoomed fully at 200mm, I definitely could see the presence of chromatic aberrations and also some ghosting, and I did not encounter any of this with the Sigma lens. So it's a point for Sigma. What I really like about Lumix is that we have stabilization. And this helps so much, especially when you're filming. Here's a video shot at 200mm without camera in-body stabilization, and you can see the difference, how well the stabilization of the Lumix lens works. When you're walking through a city, a handheld video is so much easier to create without any jitter or stutter with the Lumix lens. While the Sigma is still okay, it takes a bit more efforts to get a steady shot. And also when you're taking pictures and you have to zoom a bit further, it gives you simply the option to have a slower shutter speed you don't have to even worry about getting motion blur or having a shaky picture because the stabilization works so well on this lens. Now the next difference is a very obvious one. 20mm versus 28mm, that is significant. And if you're into landscape or if you want to photograph a cityscape or get a bit wider, the clear winner is the Sigma because it allows you to shoot so much wider. And by the way, although on the wide end the Lumix is a bit sharper, the image quality is still pretty okay. So the Lumix is an f4 to f7.1, while the Sigma is an f3.5 to f6.3. I created this chart for you guys so you can see which focal length triggers what kind of f-stop. And although it sounds as if the Sigma would have an advantage because we truly start at f3.5 on the wide end at 20mm, but as we zoom, we bypass these f-stops super fast, and as we reach 28mm, where the Lumix shoots at f4, the Sigma is already at f4.2. And this f-stop advantage continues all the way till 128mm, because this is when we're reaching f6.3. And from here on, we're going slowly but steadily to f7.1. while the Sigma stays and remains at f6.3. So the only f-stop advantage is actually at the more tele end, while all the way till 128mm it's an advantage for the Lumix. I don't think I want to give points for this category because they're very much alike. In terms of focus, neither of these lenses have issues. Not in photo mode, not in video mode. The focus is spot on, is snappy and very reliable. Now, not that I expected any different, but none of these lenses is parfocal. That means your focus point would change when you're zooming. None of these lenses suffer from focus breathing. Again, no points, neither for Lumix nor for Sigma. Because of the better sharpness in the center and also in the corners, especially in the corners, for the overall image quality, I have to give the win to the Sigma. The images look so much more refined and beautiful. And by the way, also the out of focus background is not too bad for a super zoom. So, in general, yes, with the Lumix you can create nice images. It is compact, it is travel friendly. If you have it on a trip, then you won't regret it. But if you really compare these two lenses, I have to say the Sigma produces the nicer images and has the better image quality. While the Lumix outshines the Sigma in a few categories, yes, we get stabilization and it is much smaller and more travel friendly. The Sigma outperforms the Lumix in terms of image quality and it gives us 8mm more reach. So if I would have to choose all over, if I wouldn't have this lens already, then I would definitely opt in to buy a Sigma. And this already concludes my little comparison between the Sigma 20 to 200mm and the Lumix 28 to 200. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or if you have questions or suggestions, I'm happy to respond. Till the next time, stay safe, stay tuned, and take care. Bye for now.